Hello, everyone, and welcome back to one of these interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today I have with me a special guest from not actually that far away for once to talk about a game that honestly it really kind of took me back to like the early 2000s or itself. So I'm very curious how this all comes from. But to get us started, do you mind introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
Yeah, so my name is Feta. You can call me David. It doesn't really matter. I respond to either. I run Zealous Games, which is a really tiny gaming company that I made that I just decided to make a company and make games. And what am I doing? Marty's Funducational Tour, which is a silly little game where there's this robot and he has his PhD project, or he's got some project going on and he's made a small town, and he goes, "Hey, I need a human to test out my small rural town to see, like, how good it is." And you find out very quickly that even though he has a PhD in humanology, he doesn't really understand humans, and he doesn't understand it at all. And it's kind of your job to help him out.
So immediately then, obviously, I think we've seen, like, I think the most recent famous game example I can think of, like something that kind of used this idea of like taking the insanities of humanity would be like Job Simulator or going down those type of series of games. What were you kind of otherwise pulling from to kind of when you were thinking of like, hey, let's take the robot's point of view on humanity and kind of go down that process? Like, where did that kind of come from for you?
So this actually came from a book when I was younger called Motel of Mysteries, where these archaeologists 1,000 years in the future stumble upon a motel from like the early 2000s, and they try and guess what's happening in the motel, and they make all these wrong inferences because it's 1,000 years in the future, society's changed, who can understand humans at all. And so then I just sort of turned that into a game, and I used obviously inspiration from like Stanley Parable for sure, and then There Is No Game, or There Is No Level, I forgot what it's called. um, Stuff like that.
No, that's
uh,
that's. I was gonna
yeah,
say
for the idea behind it, sorry.
no, you're totally good. I was gonna say that's it's interesting though, because like conceptually, it's an idea that is like a really fun to be like, let's take, like it's kind of like almost like how historians look at the past, right? 'Cause they have to be like, we take these relics and kind of piece things together. When you're kind of thinking about that, or you're thinking obviously in this small towny context, was there anything immediately that stood out to you that you're like, oh, this is a fun thing to play off of, or a thing that you think someone in the future is gonna look at weird or different?
Yeah, I already have ideas because I don't like what some people normalize, and maybe that's true, but I go like, man, this just doesn't seem normal, but everyone else seems fine with it, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just lambast it in this game. Hopefully people also find these weird things that people do. Like every small town has a bowling alley. Why
It's
does it
so
need a
true.
bowling alley? It's just got it. Um, like a funny quote that he's got is like, yeah, people didn't actually want to be in jail. They didn't want to be, because apparently he learned that in humanology, people wanted to be in jail. It's just all these weird things that I go, huh, that kind of makes sense. And I like to lead into the absurdism of it in a little way.
Interesting. No, that's. Is there anything kind of so obviously you're leaning into absurdities? Is there anything that like you thought of that like the robots would have got right, or anything you wanted to focus on that one immediately, or is it kind of you're like anything I want to throw in here? I think they should at least get wrong in some capacity to kind of make it
There's
into.
some stuff. Some of it is right, but not like right in the right way, where he's like, "Hey, at this library, you could take literally anything you want." And you go, "Marty, I don't think you could take whatever you want." And he goes, "Are you sure? I read that you could get a lot of stuff from the library." But he's like, "You could just take the tables, it doesn't matter." So sometimes he's right. There's another one. This is like one of the few adultish jokes I had, where he's like, "People went to the bar as a form of therapy." And I'm like, is he right? Is a bar
Is
a
he
form of
right?
therapy?
No, I do like that. There is little things that is a really good thing to kind of do. Obviously, though, we're talking this kind of from a story point of view, but it's a game first, right? The player kind of walks around, does things. What like imagine I'm a player and I'm sitting down to like go play like your demo. What kind of is like the player experience point of view? Am I just walking around this town? Is my goal to have missions from him? So on.
So your goal is he's got a ton of my initial goal was you just walk around a town and that's it. But I'm like, that's not going to be engaging at all. So I was like, what if he places things in the wrong spot? The example I use is he swaps a car in a pool. There's supposed to be a car in the mechanic garage, and it's instead a pool. And you go, Marty, this obviously doesn't belong here. And he slaps his forehead and goes, of course. Ah, my bad. And then he swaps it. So your goal is to put everything in the right spot. You go into a building and you go, this doesn't belong here. And Marty goes, okay. And he'll just barrage you with facts as you go through it.
So like, so that's a good question then there, I guess. So like, obviously, as a person who lives in society, I would assume for most things I could eyeball it and go, this doesn't seem right. Is there some level of mechanically I have to convince him, or is it really I'm more like walk around the town and be like, hey, look at this funny little prop. Hey, let's adjust this. How do we get this fixed and whatever?
Marty totally trusts you. So he'll do whatever your judgment is. You can also swap things back if you want, and he'll totally just go for it. He's very trusting.
That's It's interesting. So like usually I feel like we've seen a lot at least last recent years like robots that are like some level of not trusting. So it is interesting kind of how you're like I know he'll do whatever it is you want him to do. Have you noticed any weird like obviously you have the demo out. I'm assuming you've probably played it and had feedback sessions and all that. Have you noticed any weird behaviors that you didn't expect of players to do or kind of adjust things in certain ways?
Yeah, initially I didn't whenever you like go next to an object, it like gives a little script that explains what Marty thinks the object is, or maybe it's somebody talking. And initially I didn't have that. I just had objects. And then my friends were like, "What is this?" Because I'm not the best artist. They're like, "What is this? What's this here for?" So I had to add a little thing that goes, this is what this is." And it was fun. You know, sometimes I made them silly. An issue I knew I would have was it's coded really poorly, so you can go out of bounds pretty fast and pretty easily. So I had to fix that, and then Marty gets just a little mad at you. That's about the only time he really gets mad.
Oh, that's funny. So you have code specifically in there if you like leave certain bounds, he like gets upset.
Yeah, it's a long dynamic queue of dialogue.
Yeah, good old edge cases in game development. So actually, that's a good question here. So this is my understanding, Zealous Games' first game, right?
Yeah, I mean, first like game released on Steam. I've done game jams before.
I was gonna ask kind of what is your kind of obviously you're going through the process. You have a demo up on Steam. You could wishlist it now. What has kind of your process been? Kind of going through this fun, getting it certified process, and kind of so far been your experience. Kind of as your first solo professional game like this size.
So I have a game already in development called Replaying Briarwood that I started with, and then I'm like, I want to do this game right, so I'll just do a quick 3 month struggle to make Marty's Funducational tour. So that game was completed in 3 months. I sped through it, and I'm like, okay, this is what Steam does. This is how Steam works. Okay, this is how marketing works. Which I kind of failed at marketing, but you know, each failure you can succeed next time. But it was a lot of work because you start with an idea and then you throw up something. And initially, I had my idea was huge, and as I'm working, I'm like, I gotta hit this 3 month deadline. So I just cut out stuff that I didn't need. There was initially going to be like super dynamic dialogue, and I'm like, nope, get rid of that, get rid of that. Until eventually, at the end of 3 months, I was like, well, I'm close enough, and just sort of went with it.
So let's see. So you said 3 months was your magic time. Well, how long by the time we this game in theory comes out in July? How long do you think the total development time will actually end up being?
About three and a half
I
or
got
4 months.
that is to clarify the closest I've ever heard a developer hit their goal timeline in my life.
Well, I cut out a lot of stuff. It was really aggressive. But all I've got to do is like finish a few buildings and then an end credits, and then that's it. And I haven't been working on it for like the past month and a half or 2 months.
No,
I think
that's
actually.
I was gonna say that's still impressive though, even with cutting stuff, because like that is the age-old truth, especially our games early on are creating things like no one understands what scope is truly supposed to be. Like
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do for like my job. I used to do a lot of support stuff, so I had to get things done fast, and you have to cut stuff out. So I learned a lot from my day job, where it's like you can't do that, and just cut everything out.
No, that absolutely kind of makes sense. As we said, obviously the demo is currently available on Steam. I'm curious, kind of, as more people have played the demo. Obviously, we talked about how you know the thing, just some feedback there. Is there anything else that you've noticed, either trends of people playing the demo or anything that kind of stood out to you from the feedback you've been getting?
I'm gonna be honest. I forgot. I basically like forgot about this game because I've been working on other stuff. I haven't paid attention to the. I've seen people play the demos. Nobody like gives me feedback, mainly because I don't search out feedback, because I was on a 3 month limit and I'm already over it. So I can't just go back and keep putting time into it. Unfortunately, like as much as I would love to, I got to move on to other stuff.
No, that makes sense. We always kind of have our fun little kind of development-y time limits there. I want to say, so obviously the whole point of this game, I'd say, in its bulk is of towards obviously the satire that you wrote and kind of think about. We kind of talked about the library and its fun thing. I like the one that I keep seeing kind of floating on the Steam page of I have committed tax fraud, and they're all excited about this. I- is there anything else? Well, like I'm curious, kind of like besides the thing wrote about, or anything kind of you want to allude to, kind of any of your favorite satirical things kind of stood out to you, or things that you'd say tell me would maybe go check out a bit more than they were going to.
Yeah, the post office. I really like the post office. There's also I'll give away a little bit in the fire department. There's three fire trucks, and the first one says, "I'm the coolest fire truck." The second one says, "I think the fire truck thinks he's the coolest fire truck, but it's really me." And then the third one says, like, "I don't think about the other fire trucks at all."
That's,
Yeah, so there's a lot of jokes in there that I enjoy.
although that I feel like you probably have a lot of those kind of obviously. So that one, I think of the Mad Men quote. I'm not quite sure where you're pulling that one from, if not. But is like, are you pulling kind of when you're writing this stuff? I'm assuming you're thinking about like pop culture and stuff. Is there any like, if someone's trying to understand maybe like things you pulled from, are there any like specific like pieces of media, whether like comics or games or TV or movies, kind of the like really stood out to you kind of when you're thinking of things to draw inspiration from?
It's a whole like thing. I love watching movies and TV, so when I hear something, it's like a brainworm and it sort of sticks in there, and I don't know where it comes from. I just remember this being funny. And you sort of do it. I do have an example from the Documentary Now TV series. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you?
I'm familiar adjacently with it, but I don't know if I've seen them.
Gotcha. They do a bowling documentary, so I put a reference in there where it's like, where Marty's like, "This is where the famous quote, 'Who do you think you are? I am,' comes from," which is from that specifically.
I've definitely seen that. That one I have specifically seen. No, that is a good one. It's interesting because kind of I would when writing something like this, I would definitely think about like, yeah, how do we make it where it makes sense, but it's always that fun line of also like how you make sure almost people know the references you're pulling. Like, it is that really weird kind of fine line you kind of have to walk a bit here. I want to talk about, I guess, for a second here, being Marty the robot. Obviously, is the fun main character that you're doing all this stuff for. Did the personality or anything about Marty kind of change in your 3 month cycle, or is it kind of the Marty we see is kind of the Marty you kind of thought about and conceptualized towards the beginning?
Marty was way more aggressive. He was super aggressive. He would get like mad at you really easily. And I also, at the beginning, I wanted to have a slider where if you responded really meanly to him, he would just keep responding meaner and meaner and meaner. Or like it would also go the other way. But then I was like, I just want him to be nice. I just want it to be chill. You can play a couple gags on him, but it's not gonna be a mean game.
No, that makes see that is always that fun line of I could see where him snapping back to be fun, but also like you almost want the players to be like just poke him, and he just goes like like the person's just fully oblivious there. Is there kind of anything within that within this game kind of that you think either we have not talked about, anything you want to go send people to go kind of see or get ready to experience the game coming out soon?
That's a really good question. Uh I mean it's a pretty standard game. I don't throw a lot of surprises in there besides like what you see on the screen is pretty interesting. One important thing, I gotta shout out my cousin Maggie. She made the art for Marty. So all of Marty's faces, she made all the art for that, which is really nice of her. And he has 33 unique faces that she made. And it's different depending on what lines of dialogue you get from him.
I was gonna say that is a substantial amount of kind of art and kind of doing that too. Actually, that's a good one. Then I was just thinking about that too. Obviously, we talked about kind of mechanically, kind of story wise. The art of this game, I thought was kind of a very fun, unique thing. Again, it gave me that like I don't know, like it reminded me of that like early 2000s very cartoony type look. Was kind of where my head kind of went on it. What
Yeah, for sure.
was there anything specifically you pulled from art there that I was missing? Anything that you wanted to just be like this is like stuff you really like to kind of think about?
All of this is made in Microsoft Paint, on a 16 by 16 grid.
That's amazing. That is actually so. Is it like a block system? I say, well, how you do? That seems like an absurd amount of art for Microsoft Paint, which does not have the
Yeah,
best
no,
workflows.
you're totally right. I'm not an artist. I tried using like Procreate or something, and I was like, I could just do this in Microsoft Paint. Microsoft Paint is pretty good with there's no animations because you zoom in and you zoom into like a 16 by 16 picture and just put down one pixel at a time. And it's not that bad. It's honestly not that bad. Microsoft Paint is better than people think it is.
I guess in my head, I just go, there's probably so many. You probably just have folders upon folders of files and stuff of like everything. I'm
That is
assuming.
incredible. That is incredibly true. That is absolutely true.
Is
Yeah,
there any
it was.
kind of constraints you gave yourself then within it being Microsoft Paint from either coloring or kind of how things function?
That would have been a good idea for sure. I should have had like colors saved or like RGB codes that saved, but it was just whatever was in the moment that I was feeling the colors should be. But if anybody's listening, you should develop with preconceived palettes and not just go whatever works, because then the art will look a little more consistent.
I gotta ask the ultimate question then. Did you ever do something that you thought was correct color and went back and went, oh no, and had to redo it?
Nope.
Okay.
3 month time limit. You just go, and if it's bad, then it's just gonna be bad, and you have to deal with the consequences.
I appreciate for the record talking to a developer that has the level of constraint you put on yourself and stuck to them because like we all naturally have the level of like, well, I could give myself a few more weeks. Well, like you kind of very much are like, here's my line, here's my box, and I'm just gonna run with this box. And I appreciate how kind of you very much dealt with that being the actual constraint there. Kind of going forward, kind of obviously you finished this, you're working on new projects as we talked about. Is there would you do a constraint like would you kind of in your future projects try to constrain yourself to that level of a box, or are you trying to eventually get to the point where you have a little more like grayish room on timelines or stuff like that?
That would be the dream, but I find constraints make you finish stuff, which is important for an indie developer. Because if I had the opportunity, I would just keep switching stuff up until I got it absolutely perfect, but then no one would see it because I would never release it. So I think I would put on more constraints at some point. For games I do, like this next one, I put a schedule on it, so it's got to be done at a specific point. And even if it's my baby and I want to work on it more, I have to release it because otherwise I'll just keep nitpicking it and it'll never get done.
No, that makes absolute sense. Again, the game we've been talking about here today is Marty's Funducational Tour! Exclamation point, I have to get it fully correct there. Which is currently available to wishlist on Steam. You can go download the demo to kind of get a sneak peek of the game kind of going in. When is the do you have by chance the actual release date of the game / price? Are you still working on that stuff?
So it's gonna be releasing in mid-July, but it may be pushed back to later July because Steam's gonna have to approve my build, and I forget how long that takes, and I'm pretty late on it, so it's really my fault. But it's gonna be mid or late July for sure.
Right, and do you have a price point in mind, or is that still kind of being worked on?
Price point's gonna be like $3. I think it provides like 30 to 45 minutes to an hour, depending on who you are of entertainment. So $3 seems about right to me.
No, that sounds absolutely great. Again, the game is Marty's. I'm going to butcher this again. Marty's Funcotation. fun. It's I know it's fun educational. It's just a matter of saying it. Funducational tour.
Funducational.
Marty's Funducational tour. You are Zealous Games. Again, go check out all this stuff. Where should we be otherwise sending people to go check out either this game, your work, future work, any of that stuff?
You can send to my website or join the Discord, the Zealous Games, and then there's links to everything on the website as well. And thank you for having me on. It's been great. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Again, thank you for talking to me today, and best of luck as you both finish this game and work towards the release of future projects.
Thank you.